Start the morning right with a cup of Vinyl Tap. Nothing beats the refreshing taste of a hot, warm mug of Vinyl Tap. Enjoy your podcast in liquid form today. Vinyl Tap. Enjoy responsibly.
2, 1.
Vinyl Tap.
I'm Tim.
I'm Tim.
I am Tim.
I'm Tim.
And we just, for some reason, listened to Cats highlights from the motion picture soundtrack. Oh boy.
Who wants to kick this off?
Not
I
me.
personally
I
have
don't
a
want
lot
to.
of questions about this. I have more
Yeah.
questions than answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With this listening.
My notes are mostly why. Just
Yeah.
why for each song.
Yeah, I literally, in fact, the first word I wrote for this was why.
Yeah.
My third sentence is literally what.
My first word was what.
Oh,
With a, like, no H, just a U.
to establish a baseline that we're all working from, none of us have seen the film.
No,
Okay,
Right.
but in saying that, have any of you seen any version of Cats
I
ever?
actually have not. I feel like I should
Have you?
Nope.
Oh, okay. No, none of us have.
I've heard many of the songs. In fact, I may have actually listened to Cats before, but I've never seen it.
Okay, so none of us know whatever storyline could potentially be there.
Well, so the film invented a storyline to like string together the whole thing, but the musical is like just fragments of different cats' lives is basically the idea.
Okay.
Because
Right.
Lloyd Webber adapted it from a book of poems by T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
So it was
Okay.
never ever intended to be a single storyline.
No, that makes a lot of sense
So
because
it's kind of lack of cohesivity. That's a word, right? Is kind of like to be expected because it's not going to be like a linear story. It's not like Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
I mean,
But the film
movie
attempted to do this.
Yeah.
it did right because I did feel like I was just at a menagerie or like the RSPCA, you're like adopting cats.
That's the entire
and
idea.
here's Buster or whatever his name is.
Bustopher Jones.
And then there's
Here's
like two
Gus.
magicians,
Yeah.
right?
They're
Like,
just magical. They're not magicians.
oh, true, they're just magical cats. But like, yeah, and I couldn't quite work out, like with other musicals, right? There is the story, it's portrayed through it, but I didn't get that at all with this.
Yep.
At all.
It's because there wasn't one. There is no story to these songs. It's just about the characters.
Right.
And that's why every song comes off as an introduction to a character.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, if you're
Except for
interested
memory.
in the story and what happened with the film, just go and watch the Lindsay Ellis video
Yes.
on it. We'll link it below.
I believe it's called Why Is Cats?
Yeah, she does a very good job of just giving the context of
Yep.
how it came to be as a movie and the changes that were made and the decisions that were made.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So this side of
It's very good
table-
video.
This side of the table is very uneducated. This side is slightly more educated.
Stumbling in the dark over here.
Okay, so the very first question, I'm going to kick it off. Why?
Why did the overture sound like shit?
Yeah, it sounded like
It's Overture and Rumpleteazer.
it was like like a computer game from the early 2000s, like that MIDI kind of intro soundtrack.
Blast, yeah.
But it was
Video
also-
game music in the early 2000s was better than that.
Yeah. That's when Halo happened.
Well, I'm talking specifically about Sid Meier's games, Civilization 3, Civilization 4.
It's just like MIDI blasting at you.
Exactly, yeah. But also, like, it was peaking the whole time. And is that because it was, like, purposefully downgraded? Was it, like, set in the past,
The
where music
soundtrack-
peaked all the time?
The soundtrack for this film was recorded at least in part at Abbey Road Studios with contributions from the LSO. So, that
Are
said,
you serious?
there are no excuses.
I'm so sorry, I'm going to jump
Wow.
off that. This is a completely different topic. We can come back. But I personally listen to a lot of the LSO stuff. And my biggest grievance with this is the fact that the whole time I feel like they put a quartet in a room and fucked with it post-production to make it sound like a symphony. And that's not a comment on the musicians or the way it's sounding, because I think the way they're playing is very good. Obviously, it's the LSO. But I feel like whatever they've done, I'm constantly
The post-production.
like
Is it
confused with the post-production choices when it comes to the strings.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
specifically
Well,
the
what
strings as
about
well.
the strings? Like, was it too thin? I thought it was maybe multi-track, like it lacked any kind of, I don't know, depth
I think
somehow.
that
But
cohesion is going to be a big thing for me in this whole discussion about
Right.
this soundtrack, because that was a major thing for me, was that I just didn't feel like I was sitting in a room with an orchestra playing. Like, and I think if you're gonna employ someone like the LSO, you want it to sound like there's a symphony,
Right.
not just a few musicians that you've like
And
put
it's
through post-production.
not as though this is a problem across the board, because as we mentioned, when there was like the big bandy, jazzy, swingy stuff,
Yeah.
it sounded pretty
Oh,
decent.
I have such a no. The jazz stuff. My take on this is the entire focus in production was make the voices front and center, make them heard, and so whenever there was vocals, it was I don't know. I feel like it was scooped where the vocals sat, and everything else was flattened and squashed in a way that it was there. But the emphasis and attention was all on the vocals because it's a story and it's a musical. Because in the moments where it was, minus the overture, but in general, in other parts where it was just music and no vocals, it sounded how you'd expect it to sound. It was fun, especially the jazz stuff. But even some of the other elements, I think when the vocals weren't there, they kind of sat how you'd expect them to sit a bit more. And it really, I don't know if that's what they did, but it definitely just felt like the vocals were the focus and nothing else really mattered when they
But
were
it was,
there.
yeah, and it was so flat. Everything that supported the vocals were flat. And then there was this brilliant thing that all, like, basically...
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. Pitch flap?
No,
No,
sorry.
no,
No,
energy.
I heard you meant the other thing, but I was like, we're touching on
Yeah, especially in the ensemble number, the first one, Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats. My goodness, there was some off timing and pitch there. Oh boy, oh boy.
Right, yes.
I have a thing to contribute.
Can I speak?
Thank you for participating, Nicole.
I am a little enraged and a little upset with this, and it's my issue with La La Land as well. There are phenomenal theatre musicians in this world, and I'm talking truly phenomenal people, and I just get the feeling with these films, they went, who is going to make us the most money? And they've thrown them in there, and while, like, respectively, they might be good at singing in different genres, in their own genres, the thing with musicals and why they work so well is that these people spend hours and hours working as a team, as a unit, before they're on stage, and they're so flexible and adaptable, and it just becomes one of those things where I just feel like these people don't know each other's voices, they don't know each other's ranges. Sometimes the timbre's really off, the vibratos are completely different, and not in a way that they've chosen to be different.
Consonants fall at different times. I noticed that a lot. It was so off-putting.
And it's just that really upsets me, is that, like, there are some fabulous things in this recording, but it's like, why didn't you go to Broadway and pick out some of the most amazing people and do it with them? Like, do it with the people that do this for their jobs.
You hit the nail on the head there. This was stacked with A-list celebrities to put butts in seats.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
And like guest appearances as well, right? Some of them weren't in the movie for more than like a minute or two.
Yeah, that's right. Like, who was it in particular? I think Idris Elba showed up for like a day, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like-
Idris Elba was in this.
He's a beautiful man,
He
like,
is.
on a side note.
Why not? Why not just
Thanks for coming,
record
Nicole.
with Broadway, but then if you want those A-list actors, they can just
Dub?
dub. Or does that kill it, right?
That-
Does that
Well,
kill
I
the
mean,
magic?
Oh, well,
depends.
you're getting into the
It
whole history of this,
depends
because Tom
because-
Hooper, who directed this, also directed Les Mis, and what they did for that was they actually had the on-set audio for the singing, right? So Russell Crowe was acting and singing, like what you
At
saw
the
on
same
camera
time.
was what he
But
was
doesn't
doing.
Russell Crowe have a background in doing that sort of work?
And Hugh Jackman.
Exactly.
And who was
Yeah.
the
Anne
lead?
Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway, yeah.
Yeah.
There
Who
was-
won an Oscar for I Dreamed a Dream.
Something that really struck out to me was like the recitative kind of lines, right? That's sort of getting a bit of your spoken emotion through. You could hear people were trying to force that into their singing and gimped their singing completely. So it's like, all right, I need you to be like, express sadness. And rather than like kind of singing a bit sadder or something, they like started sobbing and like pulling away from the tone of their voice, pulling away from the tuning. Fuck the rhythm. Why does that matter? And it really ruined it for
That
me.
really strikes a chord with me personally as well, because I feel like the voice you put on, and if you think of like Wicked and things like that, where they've got these voices that they've trained to do. The voice comes after your tone and your ability to hit the notes.
Your decades of vocal training.
The vocal training
Which
does
James
not
Corden
come-
doesn't have.
Vocal training doesn't come after that voice. That character voice you put on is worked on over
It's
your
icing
vocal
on the
talent.
cake.
Like,
It's a very big cake.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, for me, some moments where the voices did stand out.
Yeah.
Like the ones where Taylor Swift sings.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift nailed
what
it.
was her name? The ballerina.
Francesca Hayward.
Francesca Hayward.
Very good singer, I thought.
I didn't write his name down. Old,
Robbie Fairchild?
Yeah, in old, how do you say that? Deuteronomy?
Old Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy. Like, I reckon that was the best, it's hard to say song, because there's the one that Taylor Swift wrote on this doesn't play like a musical number. It's like a pop song in a musical.
It's a ballad, that's all it's
Yeah.
It does have those ballady aspects, though. I wouldn't throw it into the pop genre personally. I think it's got poppy aspects, but there are some musicals that have moved away from the typical musical sound. So maybe we're heading towards a more modern ballady musical. But she is a pop composer, so
Yeah,
there's obviously elements of that.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's hard to compare when the rest of it is in that like tropey, cliche musical style. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's just how it was.
Although
composed.
Andrew Lloyd Webber has done so much better than most of the music in here, right?
100%. Like,
Listen to Gethsemane from Jesus Christ
Yes.
Superstar and tell me that any of this is like anywhere close. I mean, some of them are fun. Like
the Robbie Fairchild one, which I didn't actually write the title of, it's the 7th track.
Old Deuteronomy.
Right, so that really gave me old, like, Webber vibes. Because there was that beautiful melody where it's got the flat 4.
Oh, you mean minor 4?
Minor 4, sorry. Yeah, minor,
the
minor
very
4.
romantic.
Oh, yeah, like
And
that's...
it's also interesting because like there's just the treble voices in that and
The choir behind him, but also it like slow built into that. And for the longest time, it was just his voice.
Right.
And was it piano behind him? I can't remember.
Sure.
Whatever the instrument was, it was like a lot
Whatever
more.
the backing
It was
was.
more sparse than pretty much anything else on the album, and then it had that moment of here's the choirs, here's the harmony that's happening.
And it was, I
And
don't
the
know, it
strings
felt like
as
a bit of
well.
a shame because, like, that was stuff that I've heard from Weber before where it's, like, really good and most of the composition on this was trash. I was just gonna put it out there.
Yeah, you can tell this is like a work of passion because, like, he just wanted to do the thing about cats.
Yeah.
The guy's crazy about cats, and that's probably why they brought Taylor Swift on as well. These
Was
fucking
she
crazy
into
cat
cats?
people.
Didn't you say that she approached them?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
So
I don't
is-
know.
Even you said-
Wait,
I do
wait.
not
So
know.
is Taylor
Clarify that.
Swift
Someone in the
into
comments
cats,
is gonna be like,
like the animal, or
Yeah,
cats as in the
animal.
musical?
I mean, she might be into the musical, but she's
Probably.
definitely into
She's
the
definitely
animal.
got
So,
cats.
crazy
as
cat
well.
lady.
Cats.
Yeah.
Loves her cats.
So
They're
wait,
actually
so she really wanted to work on this purely because it's like the namesake for her favorite animal.
I mean, potentially. She might
don't
also
know.
really like the musical. I don't know her personally.
We know
I
she
haven't
likes
asked her.
I do
Shout
know
out
her,
to
but we
Jesus
didn't talk
Sizzle.
about
Three
it.
Yeah.
Sizzle, can you please let us know?
Clarify.
Because I'd really like to get some
I think
clarification.
another thing for me was that every time it was Dame Judi Dench, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Every time she's in there, I feel like she's so far back in the mix, and like she's got this kind of weak's not the right word, but I haven't got the right word where it's not this big, powerful, in-your-face voice, but I feel like I'm just searching for her voice whenever she's there. I'm trying to locate her in that mix when she's singing as well.
Yeah.
Wonder what kind of theatrical experience she has, because she's been doing stuff for so long now that maybe she does have. I don't know.
But even then, someone like Ian McKellen has a lot of theatrical
Yes.
experience, but not musical theatre experience as far as I'm aware. And as much as I love Ian McKellen, I feel like his song was the weakest on the...
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
No,
I'm not kidding.
no.
It wasn't the
That
weakest,
was also
but-
that was one of the ones where the character and the vocal training really stood out for me. Was that I was like,
Yeah.
you've got this like character voice, but I'm missing the ability to push that out of your range a little bit.
Actually
Right,
sing.
to pitch that voice.
Yeah.
While we're on that song, though, was Weber like a massive fan of Louis Armstrong? What a Wonderful World? Like,
Perhaps.
Probably. I mean, it's
mean, everyone
musical
likes that
theatre,
song.
right? So
Yeah.
they'll just
Yeah.
steal anything.
Yeah.
That's a statement. I
That's a very, very hot take coming out of Beads right there.
That's a controversial.
I'm just gonna
That's
let
not-
it
That's
stand.
not based in facts at all. Is
When
it?
you
That's
think
just-
about musical composers, is anyone more diverse than Weber? Because like you get something as far out there as this, something as
Yeah.
perhaps tropey as like Phantom of the Opera, and then you like Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a rock opera.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the guy's got depth.
He has a
He's certainly
serious
got-
amount of
No, I
depth.
don't think we need to discuss whether he's got depth. Like I think that's well established. I had a real issue with not being able to discern whether the timpani was happening at times. I know that there are things in builds, and I expect to hear the timpani rolls.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was one or two times where, I was like, oh, I can really hear that. I'm really happy that that's present. That's building my excitement for what's coming. And then there were a few times where I was sitting there going,
Where's the timpani?
is it, I feel like it's there, but it's buried. Like, getting lost. And there was also, some tremolo strings that were exciting. But again, it's just that balance. You've got such a phenomenal orchestra behind you. And I didn't know it was the LSO while we were listening to it.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I wouldn't have sat there and
been
been
able to
like,
guess.
that's the
Yeah.
LSO. And again, it's not a comment on the players, it's a comment on that mix.
Mm.
I'm sitting there going, there's nothing wrong with scratch orchestras, but it does feel less cohesive than an orchestra that plays together all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also did you individually mic them? Because that's also something that I was thinking, maybe they'd individually mic'd them rather than doing
Whoa,
an overall.
The way they
Maybe.
recorded it
recording.
would be
Maybe.
interesting and would definitely influence the overall sound.
Yeah.
No,
Because
that,
if you had every individual string and then you mixed every individual string,
then it would
instrument,
sound really flat, right?
it would
You wouldn't
sound
get that.
very different to that.
Although
above
that works for
recording.
horn sections, so that's why all this jazz combo stuff worked out.
Though, and I'm not saying it's not done. I know there are orchestras that do it for their live performances, but I think it's more that they bring that mix in together and then they mix that and they send it out. But I would be very curious to know the miking and then how they process the strings, because as a string player myself, it was very confusing. I was just sitting there with this big question mark every time they came in. I was sitting there going, why am I slightly uncomfortable about
I
the
mean,
way this
it could
sounds?
be a combination of it, right? Because there was a moment where, the kind of rock guitar came in. I think it's Mr. Oh, I don't know how to say that.
Mistoffelees?
That's the one.
Mr. Mistoffelees.
And there was like a kind of distorted rock grungy guitar, whatever you want to call it, came in, and it was like, oh, hey, this is okay. And then you could literally hear the compression on the sound, the fidelity, not like actual compression, but it's like all the nice kind of sounds you want to hear from it just got cut. And then you ended up with flat shit again.
One guitar tone in this that I liked. The rest I was like, what is going on?
What is going on? Yeah.
Where is
Oh,
the...
I didn't get that, but I must admit, I wasn't focusing on it. So
I wasn't focusing on anything.
They're like, I think it's the Macavity one that has the guitar in it the most. And the
No, it is
general
Macavity,
guitar
right?
That's
tone is...
Taylor Swift's.
She sings so well in that.
Yep.
And it really stands out when they've got someone who can actually sing on a track as opposed to someone who can't.
And you had
that's
Rebel
a
Wilson earlier
great
on.
Yeah.
point, because that was something I know we all had a very quick discussion prior to recording about that, is whether it was recorded in studios or on stage, in the recordings. And I think that's really evidence that they did it in the studio with Taylor Swift's recording. 'Cause
Yes.
she's obviously so comfortable
Like,
doing
it's
with
her
that
element.
setting.
That's where she
what
lives.
does.
Whereas all of these A-list actors, they're actors. They
Yeah.
do things on set.
And
Yeah.
that emotion comes in from their
And
acting.
that's why, even though Russell Crowe's performance in Les Mis is a little okay, buddy, but it's still passionate. You still get the emotion from him. Whereas all these actors in the studio, it's like, what do I do here?
And I feel that in the phrasing and the tapering as well. I feel like they've done a bit of post stuff, because I feel like it's not completely cohesive, because they're not. I think they've got people in their ears and they're not used to it. They're not used to having that feeding through their ears and keeping up with that and being part of it.
Also, they'd be having to make decisions singing that are going to influence their acting in a month or 2 months' time when they go to film. They don't necessarily know exactly what emotion they're going to be portraying when they're singing this line, but this is the line they've got to act to later on.
Especially because this is a musical with almost 40 years of history, but they're inventing a storyline that may change character motivations, so it's completely unclear how they're supposed to be delivering things.
Oh, and it's also a very different thing because if you are an actor, not a musical theatre person, I guess that you have that ability to kind of ad-lib a little bit while you're filming, like especially when you've got cameras, you could add a line every now and then if that moment hits you, like you're suddenly like, I'm going to add a line, where if you got that urge and you're trying to do it to the voice that you recorded before, or you're doing something and you just don't feel like it's going to fit with the song, I feel like that might also affect the way you record, like, or at least how you act from your recording.
I feel like it also means people are probably going to not necessarily commit one way or the other on vocal takes either, because it gives them a little more flexibility down the line.
Well, I do feel that they did sort of commit though, like particularly the untrained voices. They were committing to an emotion, and it stuffed the musical part of that, right? So to me, it was like you get a bunch of actors who are trained in using expression in their voice. Like you're saying, they had a character, and it's just that there's nothing else to support that. So the character came through. It felt like these people are trying to say lines and play a part, and then they're kind of like, oh yeah, and by the way, this is the melody that you have to sing to it. And they're like, oh okay. Like, I did get a big conviction on what they were trying to express. And it just made me feel like it was just awkward, right? Because, I'm sorry guys, but it was just awkward because they were expressing that character, but not allowing, I think musicals, it's compositionally emotional. Yeah. So you don't need to, which one was a really good example of this? When there's like a big moment that's building up and getting really intense and you're throwing your heart out, right? This is like the emotional climax. The music supports you. You don't need to strain your voice. You don't need to yell. You just need to sing louder, more full, and then everything backs it up. So it's that emotional climax. And wherever that example is,
I kind of did that with Hayward. I think she's got this beautiful voice. Yeah. But I think that body strength that comes from years and years of vocal training, and especially in musical theatre where you can hear these people over the microphones when they're on stage. I think that crescendo was a little flattening for me, just because I think they tapered the orchestra down and they brought everything down a little bit because it didn't really push, like she couldn't physically push harder than what she was.
Right.
And I don't think it sounded bad.
Fix that in post though, right?
Have we established that this production wasn't perhaps what you would call
not in as short or fewer words as what you've just said?
Well, I suppose we should start wrapping up, maybe drawing to a conclusion that this was an unmitigated disaster with a lot of people doing good things. Right.
Yeah, right, okay.
Weber meant well. He just likes cats. He just wanted to write a musical about cats.
He wanted this. This.
Yeah. And then Tom Hooper was like, I just want to make a film about the musical cat, and I just want more Oscars because I
don't want to lose money in this production.
And they lost a lot of money.
So in that vein, then, do we think it would have been more successful as a film, but also musically, if they had just got theatre actors who weren't big names and they had run it as though they were just filming on a set like you would and have a theatre performance, but as a film? Would that have been a better result than the Uncanny Valley nightmare that we got?
I'm not saying it necessarily has to be like filmed while
on
they're
a stage.
Acting. Like, I think that there are, I can't think of an example right now, but I've certainly watched a lot of musical theatre actors and singers singing in studios, and it has worked. But again, I think it's coming down to that experience, that ability to translate your past knowledge into making this sound good and the way you would do it on stage. And I think that comes with real familiarity with how you would do it on stage. because these people do this, like, don't just do it once.
It's their career.
They do it, like, 4 or 5 times a week for at least 6 months. Like, they're really familiar with
The role.
what they would do on the stage, and therefore when you put them in a studio, it's second nature, where like they don't have to think about what their body would be doing, and if they want to do the body movements in the theatre, it's the same as what they would be doing on stage, because you have that exasperation and that body movement. These people are fit, and it just becomes one of those things where I think I got a lack of experience. That's it. I think that's the main thing for me, is that
in the golden age of Hollywood musicals, a lot of them were just, we took the crew from the original production and just filmed them.
Yeah.
Maybe we put them in sets instead of on a stage.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's stage or studio or set. It matters that these people know what the fuck they're doing.
So I would really like to watch Cats, because what I'm about to say is
No one's
based...
ever said that.
No, because what I'm about to say is purely based off what I've seen from the trailer. There is a lot of what appears to be digital effects, and
A lot is an
darling.
understatement.
yeah, no, but like if we want to compare musical to musical, Cats, and I may be wrong because this is purely surface level, right? Cats appears to not only, like, it has heaps of film post-production. So what you're doing on stage as an actor would be that extra element more difficult to know what the end product's going to be,
100%.
because everything is CGI more or less. Whereas with, like, if you're going to compare it to any other musical,
The Sound of Music.
like, yeah, right? So then maybe it's a little less flashy looking, and sort of, you know, there's less kind of camera work and fancy
Suspension
stuff.
of disbelief, right?
Right, but like there's, you know, everyone's dancing and singing, and it's all, I feel like the cast knew exactly what the final product was. Cats, I would bet money on it that the cast had no idea what the final product would really look like.
Again,
or
when
sound
you've
like.
got people coming into set for
A single day.
day, they've got
Yeah.
no feel for how everything is working with everyone, or what it's going to look like, or what's been happening. Like, it's like you rocking up here today. Just
That's an accurate representation of how today's gone.
Yeah, I should have put you in Cats.
click above to find out what else we've spoken about in this theme.
Click below to support the artist that we just listened to.
And make sure to tune in next week for more Vinyl Tap.
That's pretty good.